Yes, I'm starting another vlog series, but this one has a deadline. So I have updates. I finished the first book, Cloaked in Shadow, yesterday, and I've sort of started the next one. Well, I mean, I have. I don't know why I said sort of. I'm like 4 chapters in. I thought as far as sequels goes, it was very well done. Do you have thoughts on it too? Yeah? Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with a brand new vlog series. Yes, I'm starting another vlog series, but this one has a deadline. So I don't remember when it was, but earlier this year, sometime last year, I made a video of 30 books I wanted to read before I turned 30, and then promptly forgot that list basically existed. So recently-ish, I was looking through just some of the TBRs because I have like a random list of TBRs, anything I've done, like the Romantic TBR I did a while ago, my veterans like TBR vet list, like things like that. And this was on there and I went, right, I need to do that. And then I remembered that I'm turning 30 in 7 or 8 months. So we're gonna try this series where hopefully I get 3 or 4 episodes out, if you will, where I try to read books that are on that list. Now, some of those books fit for other vlog series, so you'll see some of them in other different versions. So I will get more read than what you'll see in these vlogs, and I don't expect to get the entirety of this list done because I have read like I think maybe 3 or 4 books already on this list, and a good chunk of this list is even the Throne of Glass series. So there are some things on this list that are probably not going to get read, and that's fine. But my goal with this vlog series is to prioritize that list and maybe get some of those books done. I'll leave a link above if you're curious to see what like the list was, but it was just random books. And like I said, there was a series on this list. There was the finish, like I had started the book series and I hadn't finished it and things like that. The entire Throne of Glass series is on this list, like just random things like that. So I am going to be tackling the first 3 books in this vlog, and they're actually all part of the same series. I decided to kind of make it easy on me, and instead of trying to fit a bunch of things in, just go through one entire series, because I found that that has been very helpful in the past when I do some of like my hyped vlogs and when I do like series continuations and things like that. When I actually finish books in a row, like I binge a series, it's very helpful, and I think for this one it's gonna work. So in this series, we are going to finish the entirety of, and I'm going to probably butcher this, the Dragori series by Ben Alderson. The first one being Cloaked in Shadow. This is an author that I have a ton of books from. He's kind of like an indie author. He writes very queer stories, lots of male. I think all of his stories have male main, like romances as the main plot. And I just collected a bunch of his books, but I've only read one thing. And so this was his very first series. This was his debut series. It's the only one that I have owned in the entirety. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm probably going to be doing that. I do have the audiobooks for it as well. It's a trilogy, and my goal is to finish it in this vlog. So I've actually already started this one. I've started the first one. I've got 4-ish hours left in my audiobook, but I think that's at my speed because it's on Audible. I've read a couple of hours. So I think I'm somewhere in the 20 to 30% of the way through the book, and I'm definitely enjoying it, but I'm noticing already with the writing, I'm really glad that I'm going to binge the series, because if I had put any time, I have a feeling if I put any time between these, I'm going to forget what the books were about, and I might hate the second one because I've forgotten everything about the first one. And so binging them, I think, is going to be the best way to read them. I'm also trying to remind myself that this is his debut series as well. So I really enjoyed the book that I read, which was like a vampire romance. I read that a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that. This is about elves, and it follows our main character, Zachary. One of those two. And there's 3 types of elves, and he's one of them. He does have magic, but it's caged, and he kind of like keeps it inside. We don't know why, at least right now. We just know that if people knew about his magic, it would be disastrous. So he kind of keeps it hidden. And he and a bunch of people from across the land have been asked to come to the king's castle to celebrate. I mean, they go there. They don't know why they're being called there, but they go there to celebrate the prince. And so they eat and they drink, and all of a sudden a bunch of people start dropping asleep. And there's only a handful of people left. And what he's actually doing is, one form of magic is a shifter magic, and he's trying to create an army of shifters because there's some interesting stuff happening in his land that there have been rumors about, but it's actually true. So if you have this shifter gene, whatever was put in the food to make everybody fall asleep, you would not fall asleep. Well, Zach, he doesn't actually like going by Zach, but I can't remember his full name, so we're going to call him Zach for now. He is not a shifter, but whatever magic he has makes him immune as well. So he does not fall asleep. So he is trying to figure out how to work through this system of where they're forcing you to show what animal you turn into, and then you are trained, because he obviously does not turn into an animal. So he's trying to figure out how to maneuver the system, and he becomes friends with the prince. Obviously, it's going to be a romance between the two of them. I think we're going to learn more about his magic as we go along. I don't know if we'll know everything by the end of the first book. I do expect that I will be talking a lot of spoilers in this vlog, so just as a heads up, if you are someone who doesn't want to know a lot about this series, maybe skip this vlog, just because I have a feeling when I'm talking about the entire series, it's just going to be easier if I spoil things, especially in the first book. So I don't know how spoilery I'm going to get. I may not get very spoilery at all. It just kind of depends on as we go along. So I'm liking the story. I'm definitely on the edge of my seat. I kind of stopped reading so that I could start this vlog before I got too far into it, but I expect to kind of get through the series relatively quickly, honestly. So I'm excited about it. We'll see what happens. I don't really know what to expect. Like I said, I'm not too far into it. It feels very, I mean, it is YA, but it feels like a very stereotypical YA fantasy setup. It's just there's going to be a male-male romance as the lead, which unfortunately is not stereotypically true. So I love that we see that, especially in this kind of fantastical creature, fairies, something that we don't normally see. Okay, sorry, we had a baby that was crying and is now hungry. So what was I saying? I am excited about the series. I don't really know what to expect with it. Like I said, I've only read one thing, and it was at the time his newest book, so I'm sure there's going to be a vast difference in how it was written. That one was also adult, so I remember it being super spicy. I don't expect this one to get as spicy, but I'm excited about the fantastical world. I love elves. It's one of my magical creatures. Fae, elves, those types of creatures that I just adore reading about. So far, so good. I'll come back to you probably a little bit farther into this book. Maybe I'll finish it. Who knows, depending on how this first book goes. But that is my plan for the first vlog, is to binge this series. So let's see how that goes. Before we get you into this video, I did want to take a second to thank Luisa, who is the partner of today's video. As you guys probably remember, like about a month ago, they reached out to me and wanted to partner with me for a video. I was very excited about this, and now they've decided to do it yet again for their Black Friday sale. So I love their pieces of jewelry. I got this necklace the last time, and while I loved it, I didn't know what to pair it with. I didn't know how to wear it. I wasn't sure what to do. And then I got these beautiful earrings that match perfectly, and now I wear it all the time. So I am obsessed with their jewelry. It's incredibly reliable. I wear the gold studs or the silver studs that I got last time all the time, and they are incredibly beautiful pieces, incredibly unique pieces. I also got the silver version of this necklace as well because I'm obsessed with this design. It's very simplistic. It works with a lot of earrings and a lot of outfits. I primarily wear silver over gold, so when I got a necklace that is the design that I just loved, but the silver version, I was very excited. And that's one thing that I really like about their stuff, is that they have it in multiple different versions. So if you find a piece that you really, really enjoy, but you are like me and you like to wear a lot of silver, or if you do like to wear a lot of gold, they have them in multiple different options, as well as these fun little designs as well. So for a very limited time, because it is a Black Friday, they are doing a lovely sale. I will have a link down below where you can get up to 30% off. This is a great time to get gifts for Christmas if you have someone in your life who is obsessed with jewelry. These are incredibly beautiful, sustainable pieces from New York. So I highly recommend them. I've been wearing them nonstop since I received them like a month ago. So I am like obsessed with them, honestly, and not just because like I'm partnering with them. Like genuinely, these are some of my favorite pieces of jewelry that I own. So make sure you check out the link down below for a lovely discount if you'd like to check some things out yourself. These are stunning. I'm obsessed with them. Do yourself a favor and check them out because you will thank me. So I have updates. I finished the first book, Cloaked in Shadow, yesterday, and I've sort of started the next one. Well, I mean, I have. I don't know why I said sort of. I'm like 4 chapters in. I ended up giving the first one 4 stars. It was very good. I liked it a lot. I have thoughts on it though. A couple of things. The series title. Okay, it's called Dragori. I was, I think, correct when I said what I thought it was. And that is a kind of magical creature, which I'll talk about in a second. But this world is made up of mainly elves. There's 3 different types of elves, and I don't remember which one's which, but like they all bleed a different color. So there's gold, there's red, and there's black. And I think our main character, Zach, is the one that is red. So he has this magical ability that is just kind of like controlling elements is the best way that I can describe it. Mostly wind. But he thinks of it as like he has this different magic system than anyone else has. So he's been told to kind of like keep it locked away. So he has like this thing in his mind where he thinks of it as like in a cage. He lets it out sometimes, but he tries to keep it locked away because he knows that he's been told it's unsafe to have this magic. And so he's called with a bunch of other elves to this, like the king's house, basically, because he wants to start this army of shifters. I might have told you this already. And so at a banquet, something gets put in the food that only affects people who are not shifters, and him for some reason. So he can't actually shift, and he refuses to shift because he can't do it. And so he is sent to the prince, and they kind of start this friendship, and he agrees to train him. There's more stuff going on. As we learn throughout this book, the prince is this thing called a Dragori. And basically, so one of the things about this book that's kind of confusing is the world building, and that could entirely be on me. I just wasn't maybe paying enough attention when that part of the story was being told. But there were druids in this world previously, but they've all been eradicated at this point, or so it has been thought. And these 4 Dragoris were created to kind of keep the druids in line, I think is the best way that I can describe it. I don't think that's right, but that's the best way that I can describe it. And so they all have this ability, and it's basically this world's version of dragons is the best way I can describe it, except for they're like shapeshifters. So like they're people who can transform into dragon-like creatures that don't really look like dragons. They look like people with like wings. They're a little bit bigger. They have horns. They can fly and stuff like that. So the prince is one of these. I think I mentioned that. And so when he shifts for the first time, Zach is like, whoa, you kind of look like a dragon. And the prince is like, well, okay. So the story of dragons is mythology, and it's rooted in what Dragori were kind of like told to be. So really dragons were based on Dragori, and dragons are fictional, but Dragori is real. It's the best way I can describe it. So we have that, and the prince has this like fire magic. And so they go through some hard times, they go through some stuff, and they figure out that the king is like lying about some things, because they think that this one of the elves, the group of elves, the ones that bleed black, are the ones that are attacking the prince and trying to cause a bunch of problems and setting a bunch of places on fire. And so when they're out doing things, Zach saves the prince, and by using arrows, he's a really good archer. And so like he goes, and as they're leaving, he looks at one of the arrows that he realized nicked one of the people, and the blood on it is red. And he's like, okay, so that's not true. So he goes to the king, and he's like, look, I can prove it. Here's a little piece of skin, super gross, but here's a little piece of skin, and it's bleeding red, you can see. And the king is like, very interesting. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. We will look into it. Don't tell anyone until we don't want to start mayhem. It's like, makes sense. And then the king has this big pronouncement that the elves that bleed black are like the ones that are causing the problem. And he's like, but I gave you this thing. And so he and his friend Naya and the prince, who, fun fact, I was listening to most of this book. In the audiobook, it sounds like the prince's name is Adrian with an A. In the book, if you physically read it, his name is Hadrian with an H. I would never have known if I hadn't have looked at my ebook. So that's a side note. And so the three of them start to kind of look into some stuff, and then realize at the last minute that the king is actually a druid, and that the king he was saying he was may not be alive. So like Hadrian's actual father, he basically took on the disguise of Adrian's father, is the best way that I can describe it. So now they're calling him the druid, instead of like this king guy, which makes me think that like there's a chance Hadrian's father is alive somewhere. I mean, he may not be as well. It just kind of depends. But his father this druid was not his father. So the first book ends with Zach kind of being in this fight with a shifter. It was like this fight that they had been talking about since the beginning. They set it up, and it was going to be between him and one of the guards. And the king basically moved it up and made him fight a shifter. And so in doing so, he got really mad, or like something happened, and like sometimes his anger takes over his emotions. And so it did that, and his power came out, and he basically like killed a bunch of guards. Oh, I know what it was. They figured out who it was that shot the arrow at Hadrian that Zach saved him from, and who has been trying to kill Hadrian this whole time. And so he gets really, really mad and kind of like kills this person who happened to be the captain of the guard and a bunch of guards. And then they flee. And so they find out that Zach is actually also Dragori. Surprise, were we shocked? But there was a ritual that his parents did when he was younger. They went to like this guy, I can't remember what they're called, but his friend Naya is one, empath. And so this empath used his magic and kind of caged Zach's abilities. So he has some abilities, but like he doesn't have his full potential. So they need to go to this other place that has a bunch of healers, and they will do a ritual which will release whatever hold is on his magic, and then he'll be able to like use his Dragori form and like actually use all of his abilities, things like that. And the book kind of ends with them getting in a fight with the king, discovering that the king is actually a druid, and they get saved by a third Dragori, who is part of this other group that they need to go to release Zach's, whatever bind is on Zach's magic. But she wants nothing to do with them. So that's kind of how the book ends. Very interesting. Gave it 4 stars. Like I said, some of the magic system and world building was a little confusing, but that could be chalked up to me not paying as much attention as I need to. It could be chalked up to this author's very first book, anything like that. I'm really glad that I'm reading these one after the other, because there's a lot of plot devices and tropes and just things that you would expect from a YA romance, which totally makes it, like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, this, when it comes down to like the bare structure of the plot, is very similar to a lot of things that are out there. Again, makes sense. This author is basically trying to like write fantasy books where there is a male-male main romance. or like a gay main character, because I remember him talking about something about the fact that like he wanted to write books that like he saw himself in and like would have wanted as he was growing up. And so to have that, and to have written, like he's written a lot of books, so like that's really, really cool. So it makes sense that you would use a lot of the things that is very popular, just changing like the main character. Again, not a bad thing, just something to note. So like that's interesting. The dragon kind of backstory, I was really interesting. I like that this was mainly an elf story. Like the main characters are all elves. And I really liked that because I just like elves. And it's I haven't seen many books that are like that don't have other creatures in it. Now, yes, there are druids, but I would say that that's pretty similar to elves, and also there is a singular druid in this world at the moment. And then again, it's Dragori, but like this is not a system where there are like lots of magical creatures. It's like this is a system, and the people who live in it are elves. So I mean, that was an interesting twist that I hadn't seen in a while. So I really enjoyed it, and now it's time to start the second one, which is Something in Light. So far in this book, I haven't read very much. Something happened to Hadrian that the druid did to him, which is making him very weak. I mean, he basically like tortured the crap out of him, but like they did something that made him very weak. And so Zach, Naya, and like the guards of this world, or this group of people, are being sent on missions because there's supposed to be this plant that's supposed to help him, and they get sent, they get sent, they get sent. And the book starts with them on one of these missions, and they get attacked by basically zombies. They are dead bodies that have these runes all over them that clearly are druid runes. And they think it's like the druid sympathizers. And so, because those are a thing. And so they get attacked by them, and for the first time they actually lose a guard. And so this group of people, there is a queen, but she's very rarely there. So they are guided by like a council of sorts. And so there's different people on the council that have different abilities. And Zach is fed up with his council. He's like, you keep sending us on missions and they're not working. I refuse to go. And they're like, well, we let you come in. We let you stay here. This is, you know, how you repay our hospitality. He's like, I would leave if you let me, but you're not letting me leave. And they're like, no, we can't let you leave. And so he's like, here's case in point. And so far what we have learned is they after this council meeting, part of the council chamber, after they leave, like a tower where like Zach and Hadrian and probably Naya were staying, goes up in flame. But the flame is this blue flame, and they all keep blaming Hadrian, and Zach is like, no, but his flame is the natural red kind. And so he gets approached by someone on this council who's like the super young one, and she goes, well, so see, what happened was I had this other woman who was the other Dragori go talk to him and try to ignite this thing called heart fire, and if he does that, then it'll like heal him from inside. And it works, and this heart fire is blue. And so there's something about that being like, it's dangerous for him to have this for a prolonged period of time, because it's his direct connection with the druid, and I think it'll like maybe burn them up from the inside. I don't know. I haven't quite figured out how the heart fire works, because it's literally just been introduced. But she mentioned something about this staff of light that the goddess created, which was her way of kind of like quenching this heart fire. So they made Hadrian basically like connect to his heart fire so that it would heal him, and now they have to go find a staff. They haven't said this is what they're doing yet, but we all know this is where it's going. They're going to have to go on an adventure, find the staff so that it can quench this heart fire before it like eats him up from inside or something. And so that's where we're at. I actually think I stopped in the middle of a chapter while Hadrian, see, I keep saying his name wrong because I've been hearing it wrong this whole time. Where Hadrian and Zach have been kind of talking, because Zach has kept the fact that his dad was this druid, or supposedly was a druid, or this druid was pretending to be his dad, a secret because the council had asked him to because they were afraid it was going to hurt him. And so this person on the council was like, nah, we told him because we figured that's what would kind of ignite this fire and save him, and it did. And this is something that all of the Dragori can do. So they have 3 so far. So I'm thinking that somewhere along in the series we're going to find the 4th one. Don't know who it's going to be, but we're going to probably find the 4th one, maybe at the end of this book. Who knows? But like, that's where this is going. Is clearly, like, you can tell by the cover that like he is holding this staff. So like that's the whole purpose of this book, is probably them going to try to find this staff. And also, as you can see, like our main character now has wings because he has found his Dragori form. So I'm really enjoying this series so far. This one's a little bit longer. Each book gets a little bit longer each time. So this one is a little bit longer than the last one. And not by much, but like just by a little bit. And the 3rd one's even bigger. But I'm enjoying it. It's giving me like very simplistic, but like Lord of the Rings vibes. And I think it's because of the elf characters and this like sweeping story, I think is why there's just like something, it's down to vibes. It's not like anything with the story itself that makes me think it's like that. It's just vibes give me Lord of the Rings, again, on a very simplistic level, because Lord of the Rings is incredibly complex. So I'm not saying that this world is not complex, because it has its moments, but compared to Lord of the Rings, it's very simplistic. Anyway, that was a long rambling way of me saying I finished the 1st book and I'm starting the 2nd one. So I'll probably come to you when I may be more into this one. Maybe I finished it. Who knows at this point? My reading is all over the place, and my ability to check up with you guys is all over the place as well. So I will come back to you when I can. But I have started this one, and so far so good. Again, very glad I'm reading these, or like binging these back to back, because if I had put any time between these, I probably would not be enjoying it, or at least the 2nd one, as much as I am at the moment. Hello. So it's been quite a while since I came and talked to you. But I have finished both of the other books. So let me tell you some thoughts on them. So the 1st one, or I guess the 2nd one in the series, Found in Night. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. As the sequel goes, I really liked it. It worked pretty well, honestly. And I liked the exploration, because like in the 1st book, we really just kind of get introduced very like on a base level to the magic system and the Dragoris and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in this one, we really get to see more of that. We get to see more understanding. There's this thing called heart magic, which all 4 of the Dragori have. I believe in this one, we meet the 4th one at like the very end, if I am correct, or near the end. So we do know where all 4 of them are, which is good to know at the end of this one. But it's like we really just get to see the magic system and learn more about the lore, because like there's not a whole lot of information known, and the people who know things know very little. And so a good chunk of this book, okay, maybe not a good chunk, but like the middle portion of this book, let's say, is Zach and a close friend kind of like searching through this library to kind of find more information, to figure out like what's going on. Because Adrian, like I think I mentioned in the last clip, Adrian has accessed his heart magic because it healed him. But it also means that like now he has, like there's just something like dangerous about it, and so they need this staff to fix it. And so there is a journey of sorts of them trying to figure out the whereabouts of the staff, Zach going off on his own to figure it out, because like there was an attack on the city that they were staying in, and so they get called back from their quest, and the queen is more interested in saving her people than she is in saving Zach, even though, not Zach, and Hadrian, even though Zach is like, if you don't save Hadrian, he could like combust, and that would hurt all of the people in your city. And she's like, no, we're gonna have a united front. Anyway, there's a little bit of politics in this book. We don't dislike her. She's just doing the best she can, and it's not, a few times she is ruling out of fear. I would say it's not stated in the book that she does this, but like I would say there's a few moments where she's definitely like afraid for her people. So she does things that aren't in the best interest of everybody. Like at one point they put on this giant show to show the three Dragori and like their friends' powers to her people so that like they feel like they can be trusted and they can feel safe. Well, Hadrian is struggling because every time he uses this magic, he gets more and more hurt and more lost. And she asks him to do that, even though she knows, and even though Hadrian knows. So he does, he showcases his fire magic and then immediately drops into a coma because somehow the druid now has his soul. I don't know, it got like real weird real fast. So there's definitely elements of this world that overall little bits don't make sense. And that, again, like I said when I talked about the first book, could be me just not like paying attention enough, not like hooking on to some of the elements that I should have hooked on to the first time. I don't know. But either way, I really liked it. The thing that I found really interesting about this book specifically is like near the end, the big bad plan that like the druid is working towards is revealed. So you still have a book to go. Peanut has thoughts. You still have a book to go, and yet you know what the plan is, and I feel like a lot of fantasy books don't do that. I found like the fact that like we know this big guy plan is very interesting. She's just gonna talk apparently the whole time. So I think this one 4 stars. I thought this one, like I said, as far as sequels go, was really good. The last book, Poisoned in Light, I ended up giving that one 3 stars. I think this is when I hit, I will not say a slump because it wasn't a slump, but I hit a slowing in my progression because at this point I had read 2 books. This was the biggest book. I think I made it about halfway through this book, and this book is very dark. It starts very dark because like usually what you see in books is when the big bad guy has a character, it's like the love interest or a side character. It's never the main person, whereas, at least in the books that I've read, whereas in this book, the main person, Zach, is stuck with the druid, whereas his friends escaped. So he's stuck with the druid, and the druid's one of the other Dragori who has been like brainwashed by the druid to think that everyone hates her except for the druid is there to save her, even though Zach is like trying to help her and like telling her and showing her like he does not care about you. She can't unsee the hurt that other people have done to her. So anyway, side note. So this book starts with him stuck because like the city that they were in the second book that was like super safe, the druid has taken over by the end of the second book. So in this book, he is parading them around the city. He is like forcing Zach to do things that he doesn't want to do. He's forcing Zach to come sit and watch him eat, even though like he's not being given food sometimes. And so, I mean, he's keeping him alive because clearly he needs something from Zach. He needs something from all 4 of the Dragori to make his plan work, which is to bring back like his ancestors. And so usually you don't see, the main person is usually the one who's trying to save someone. Whereas in this book, the main person is stuck. And like I said, it's super dark. It's a rough situation. Like they're in the city and most of the people who live in the city are like stuck in their houses to hide themselves away from the druid. So there was elements of this that reminded me of like Amarantha's court at the end of the first ACOTAR book, just like how dark it was. I think Amarantha's court is a little bit darker just based on some of the stuff that we see, but it had that same vibe. So you're stuck in that vibe for at least half of the book, if not more. And like I said, this is the biggest book of the series. So it's like twice as long as the first one, I think. So like it is a thick book and a lot happens. But once I reached this point, I had like lost steam. I had read 2 books. I had really been like dive into this world. And while I still think it was good that I binged the series, because if I hadn't have binged the series, I would have read the first one and I would have probably not gotten back to the other 2 in a very long time, if ever. This is where I lost steam because I was so into this world that like I wanted something different. So by this point, I was exhausted. And so it took me a long time to get through this book. So that's why this one got 3 stars, as the other 2 got 4, because I think it's got 3.5 actually, because I was just like dragging myself through it. I wanted something different. Like I was ready to read something different, but it was still a good book. Like as far as endings go, it wrapped almost everything up perfectly. Like this felt like every time I thought we had reached like the end, like the moment that was going to be like the climactic moment of the book, I would look and I would be like 45% of the way through or like 60% of the way through. And I'm like, wait a second. And then everything happened in like the last 100 pages or so. So I am so glad that I binged this because again, I don't know when I would have actually forced myself to read through this. Also, I kept reminding myself that this is this author's debut, which means that his writing has probably increased and gotten better. There was a lot of elements in this series as a whole. Now I'm just talking about the series as a whole. In the series as a whole, like I mentioned at the very beginning, that were like very tropey items and things that you would see in a lot of YA fantasy, but it made sense for the story he was trying to tell. So like that was all fine. And again, this is a YA book. The romantic elements were really sweet. I liked seeing that relationship through the whole thing. The epilogue of this book was probably my favorite part of the whole book. Not because it was the epilogue, just because it was like this very sweet moment. So I think overall, I'm really, really glad that I read this series because I've been very interested in it for a long time. It's the only one that I think at the moment is a completed series for this author. He's got a few other series that he has started, and he's got a lot of companion series too, but like I think there's at least one or two more series that are actually like series and they're not completed, if I am correct. I might be wrong on that, but this is the first one that's like completed. So I loved it. I loved reading it. He didn't shy away from a lot of harder topics and stuff. He shied away from some of the more like romantic scenes because again, it is YA. So like if there was a romantic scene between some people, he did not go descriptive. Whereas in the previous book that I have read by him about the vampires, it was incredibly descriptive. There's definitely some difference in writing. So I'm curious to see if there's anything else this author has written that is specifically YA, because I'm curious if like maybe his adult stuff is better for me personally. Either way, I really enjoyed this series. Like, I'm really glad that I read this. I've got 3 more books off of my TBR, off of my 30 before 30 list. Like, this as a whole was an incredible success. So, those are my thoughts. That's kind of the vibe of this first vlog, if you will, in the 30 before 30 section. I hope you enjoyed. I have plans to do, like I said, I think I'm going to probably end up doing 3 or 4 episodes in this series before I turn 30. Fingers crossed. We'll see. We won't do another one for the end of this year, but we hopefully will do a few more next year. I'm really glad that I have finished these. I feel content in the how it went, you know? And of course, before I go, don't forget to check out Anna Luisa down below. I will leave a link to everything down below and more information. And of course, you have up to 30% off for Black Friday. So I highly recommend them. So go check it out. But otherwise, I think that's it. So if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome and growing family. I've also got all my social media down there as well as other fun bookish links. So don't forget to check all that out. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!